Welcome to the Foundry by Forge College. Today, we're diving into the mechanics of Byzantine fault tolerance in blockchains. If you were with us for our last explainer, we explored the theoretical roots of the Byzantine fault problem. We saw that when nodes in a distributed network act unpredictably, or worse, maliciously, things can get incredibly messy, incredibly fast. So today, we're shifting gears. We're moving away from the abstract theory and getting right into the concrete mechanics, looking at the exact math and the strict rules that actually allow blockchains to reach agreement.
Here's our blueprint for today. We've got a quick recap of the Byzantine problem, followed by quorums and the math of agreement. Then we'll hit the 3 phases to consensus, state machine replication, a concrete PBFT example, and wrap it all up with the trade-offs between safety and liveness. Now, to make sense of all this distributed systems math without our heads spinning, we're going to use an analogy throughout this explainer. Think of a slightly chaotic symphony orchestra. Trust me, it's going to make these concepts click right into place. All right, Section 1, the Byzantine problem recap. Moving from theory to concrete mechanics. As you might remember from our previous lesson, we laid out the difference between simple crash failures, where a node just happily unplugs and goes offline, and arbitrary or malicious failures. We realized that if even a single bad actor is intentionally lying to different parts of the network, simple majority rules just completely fall apart. So that brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it? How do you actually reach agreement when some nodes are straight up lying? Back to our orchestra. Imagine you're the conductor in a grand concert hall. How can you guarantee a beautiful symphony if, say, up to a third of your musicians are actively trying to sabotage the performance by blasting heavy metal instead of Mozart? If you just listen to whoever is loudest, you get a disaster. We need a system that absolutely forces the truth to the surface. That takes us to Section 2, quorums, the math of agreement and setting the thresholds. This is where we turn that abstract threat of a rogue violinist into verifiable concrete numbers. First step, a quorum. Basically, it's the minimum number of replicas whose agreement is enough to consider a value officially accepted. Then we have a supermajority. That's a specialized overlapping quorum designed specifically to prevent contradictory decisions. In our orchestra, think of a quorum as a strict rehearsal rule. The conductor can only move on to the next measure of music if a specific, heavily weighted portion of the orchestra gives a definitive, synchronized nod. A simple 51% majority? Nowhere near enough when liars are involved. We need a supermajority so large that we guarantee the honest musicians always outnumber the saboteurs in any group giving that nod. Which brings us to a brilliantly simple formula. N is greater than or equal to 3F plus 1. This is the gold standard fault tolerance bound in classical BFT. N is your total number of nodes, and F is your faulty or malicious nodes. In plain English? To tolerate a specific number of liars, your total network has to be more than 3 times that size. If exactly 1/3 of our orchestra is trying to ruin the show, requiring a 2/3 supermajority to proceed, means that any group that agrees will mathematically always contain a majority of honest players. The liars simply don't have the sheer numbers to force a bad decision. Section 3, 3 phases to consensus, or what we can call the rehearsal process. Because here is the thing, just having the right number of musicians isn't enough. They have to communicate in a very specific, rigid order. Classical BFT protocols use a 3-phase exchange pattern to get every single honest node perfectly aligned. Phase 1 is propose, sometimes called pre-prepare. The leader proposes a value. The conductor taps the baton and shows the exact passage to play. Phase 2 is prepare. The replicas get it and instantly broadcast to everyone else that they saw that exact proposal. This is the musicians quickly glancing around at each other, right? Hey, did you see measure 42? Yep, I saw 42. And finally, phase 3, commit. After gathering enough evidence, the replicas broadcast a final confirmation. It's that collective final nod locking the decision in stone. Only then do they actually play the notes. Moving on to Section 4, state machine replication, playing the score, and ensuring order. So we figured out how to agree on one single note, or one block of data. But blockchains are continuous ordered chains, right? State machine replication, or SMR, essentially layers those 3 phases we just talked about across a heavily ordered log of commands. Picture it as playing the entire musical score, measure by measure. Every single log slot requires its own full round of propose, prepare, and commit quorums. And because the execution is deterministic, as long as our honest replicas agree on the order, they're going to play the exact same song perfectly every time. It's an incredible structural concept. Just keep in mind, all of this relies on authenticated messages like cryptographic signatures, so we know exactly which musician is shouting which message across the hall. Section 5, PBFT, a concrete example.
Let's literally count the nods. Let's actually put this math to the test in a practical Byzantine fault tolerance scenario. Say we have a system with 4 total replicas, that's our N, and 1 faulty replica, our F. Now the formula requires a quorum of 2F plus 1 for agreement phases, which gives us 3. So in both the prepare and permit phases, we absolutely need a quorum of 3. Well, think about it. If there are only 4 nodes total, any 2 quorums of 3 mathematically have to overlap by at least 2 nodes. Since we know only 1 node is faulty, that overlap absolutely guarantees that at least 1 honest, truthful replica is sitting in both groups. That single honest node acts as an anchor. It stops the network from ever accidentally approving 2 conflicting values for the exact same slot. It's a beautiful, elegant mathematical proof that the liars simply can't win.
Finally, Section 6, Safety versus Liveness Trade-offs, Waiting versus Progress.
This is absolutely crucial, because designing a consensus mechanism is ultimately about managing a massive, delicate tension. It's a tightrope walk between making literally 0 mistakes and actually finishing the performance. Safety is the ironclad guarantee that nothing bad ever happens. In our orchestra, it's saying, wait for everyone to nod twice before playing a single note. It completely prevents conflicting performances, for sure. But if just one musician steps out for a coffee break, the whole show stalls. Liveness, on the flip side, is the guarantee that something good eventually happens. It's the rule that says, hey, once 2/3 of the orchestra nods, just go. You're optimizing for progress so the audience actually gets to hear the piece, even if the conductor is acting up or the network is lagging, but you're risking slightly weaker guarantees if network conditions get really wild.
Honestly, this sums it up perfectly. Safety is the anchor, liveness is the progress. When you step back and look at the mechanics we just covered, the overlapping quorums, those strict 3-phase message rounds, that is the mathematical overlap anchoring the safety of the system. But the optimistic progress rules, the timeouts, the leader rotations, all of those exist to favor liveness. Every single blockchain protocol you'll ever look at has to make deliberate, calculated choices about how to balance this exact tension.
So I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought today. The next time you evaluate a new protocol, don't just skim the marketing material. Ask the hard questions. What exact quorum size does it require? How many phases are happening per log slot? And maybe most importantly, under what network assumptions does their fault-bound math actually remain valid? Because answering those questions is the difference between hoping a network is secure and knowing for a fact that it is. If you want to dive deeper into evaluating these protocols and explore a whole ecosystem of fascinating Web3 topics, I highly encourage you to check out forge.college. There is a massive amount of material waiting for you there to continue this journey. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today. Keep asking those great questions, and I'll catch you in the next one.